Washington has a dark side. Everyone already knows that this state is absolutely beautiful and has awesome hiking and coffee, but there are some negatives about Washington that are shocking and that just might change your mind about moving here if you're thinking of it. I am Leah Courage, and today we are exploring the negatives of Washington state. And by the end of this video, you are going to be educated about several powerful things that just might change your mind about Washington before you make a very expensive decision to relocate here. So let's dive in. All right, let's start with the one that everyone thinks that they are prepared for, the weather. You've seen the memes and you've heard about the drizzle, but as someone who has actually grown up here in Washington, and I've also lived in sunnier states, I can tell you, you are not prepared for the big dark, as I like to call it. In early 2026, we're seeing a record number of relocation regrets, specifically because of the light deficiency here. So in Western Washington, from the first week in November until late March, the sky starts to descend and it creates this gray, impenetrable lid that sits 10 feet above your head for weeks on end. On top of that, the days are short in the wintertime. So I want you to imagine waking up on a Tuesday in January. It's 8 o'clock a.m. and it's gray outside. You head to your office and you sit down at your desk, and by 4 p.m., the sun has disappeared. Not that you ever saw it, and the sky is already going dark. You do this in Washington for 4 months straight. So, story time. We had clients move from California a few years ago, and they bought a beautiful $1 million home in Anacortes with us. They were absolutely in love with the boating here, in the green trees, and the whole lifestyle of the Pacific Northwest. They were Californians, and I warned them they would need to buy at least a sad lamp and a February trip to Hawaii, and they laughed at me. But only 2 years later, they called me almost in tears saying, "Leah, we're going back. We can't stand it anymore. We are tired and we are depressed, and we miss our friends in California, and we miss the sun." And we sold their house a few months later, and now they're back in California. And let me tell you, that was an expensive mistake that they made by moving here. So the moral of that story is that the psychological weight of the winter is heavy. But there's not only that, there's also the physiological challenge that this area provides. Your body stops producing vitamin D, and your serotonin levels crater here in the winter. In 2026, we're actually seeing a massive surge in late winter where the airports are actually packed with locals who simply cannot take one more day of gray. And if you have any history of seasonal depression, or if you thrive on high UV days, the dark side of Washington's climate is going to break you. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's a slow motion psychological war. And if you don't have a strategy to fight it, you will find yourself listing your home for sale before you even see your first summer. Now let's get into the financial dark side. This one's fun. This is the one that really gets people because it feels like a bait and switch. So you've probably heard that Washington is one of the few states with zero income tax for now. Sounds great, right? Well, don't worry, the state makes up for it in plenty of other ways. So as of January 1st, 2026, the free lunch, so to speak, is over, and we are in hardcore tax territory. The state government hasn't implemented an income tax yet, but they have become masters of the consumption tax. First, let's talk about the new tiered capital gains tax system. So if you're a high earner or you plan on selling a business or high value stocks to fund your retirement here, the state is now taking 9.9% of everything over a particular threshold. It's one of the most aggressive shifts in our state's tax history. Second, we have the luxury surcharge. So if you plan on celebrating your move with a $110,000 electric SUV, for example, well, in 2026, you will pay your standard sales tax, which is already near 10% in King County, plus an additional 8% luxury tax on the value over $100,000. Then there are the gas taxes. So we consistently have the highest or the second highest gas taxes in the entire nation. This is to fund the massive infrastructure projects like the I-5 bridge replacements, which we desperately need, and the light rail expansion. So if you have a commute or if you drive a gas-heavy vehicle, you are being taxed every single time you pull up to the pump. When you add up that 10.3% sales tax in Seattle, skyrocketing property tax assessments, which are staying high because inventory is still low, and the cost of basic services that no income tax benefit is often completely swallowed up elsewhere. So if you aren't a high saver who lives a very frugal lifestyle, the dark side of the 2026 Washington budget will leave you wondering where all of your extra money actually went. All right, now I know that I've just thrown a lot of heavy reality at you. And if you're sitting there thinking, Leah, I was already halfway packed. Is it really this complicated? Well, the answer is yes, but it's only complicated if you're guessing. I want to pause for a second because my team every single day gets emails from people just like you who are 90 days out or maybe more or maybe less from moving, and they're completely overwhelmed with the 2026 data. They're stressed, they're looking at Zillow at midnight, and they're worrying about falling into one of these traps. So I want you to stop guessing and start building an actual roadmap. And I want you to look at the description right now because there's a link to get in touch with us directly, and we would love to talk you through all of your options. So now we have to talk about the dark side that hits home literally, and that would be public safety. So in 2026, the conversation around crime in Washington has shifted from a big city problem to a statewide concern. If you're moving here, then you need to be aware that property crime is rising at a rate that honestly is alarming. Growing up in Seattle, for me, if you didn't lock your door, it wasn't a huge deal. But by the time I sold my mom's house back in Wallingford in 2016, we had to deal with tweakers wandering into the backyard looking for a way to break into the house so they could rob us midday. That's a really big difference. And that was 10 years ago. And I'm sorry to say, honestly, that things have only gotten worse. So neighborhoods that look adorable as you drive through are dealing with things like vandalism, carjackings, break-ins, and the overall crime that's rising like never before. But here is the part that's truly shocking, in case that wasn't shocking enough. It's the legislative reality behind the numbers. So in a lot of urban and suburban hubs, local politics have definitely taken an approach that a lot of residents feel is definitely going easy on criminals. We're seeing kind of a revolving door justice system where people that are committing property crimes are, or even worse, are back on the street even before the police finish the paperwork. Now, a disclaimer on this is that this level of crime certainly isn't everywhere in Western Washington by any stretch, but it's chiefly in the larger cities, and it's definitely spreading. I've had clients be stunned that they go into Seattle and then their car gets broken into in broad daylight, and the police might not even show up to take a report. It creates kind of a Wild West atmosphere in some of our expensive zip codes. And it's ironic because you're paying these ultra high property taxes, and yet you are increasingly responsible for your own security. So in 2026, the safety gap, if you want to call it that, is real. We're seeing a massive surge in the installation of private security systems and gated driveways and neighborhood watch groups because people don't feel like the state has their back anymore. If you're moving from a place where law and order are strictly enforced, then the crime climate in a lot of cities here is going to feel like a massive culture shock. So before you buy, you need to look past the manicured lawns. You need to look at the crime maps, and you need to talk to neighbors about what's actually happening on their street at 2 a.m. Because in Washington, a beautiful view doesn't always mean that you're living in a safe neighborhood. It's a dark and sobering reality, but it's one that you deserve to know before you sign those closing papers. So now let's move into the social dark side. So of course you've heard of the Seattle freeze. Everybody knows about that. And it's the idea that people here are nice and polite and friendly, but they're kind of cold. So in 2026, this has shifted from a quirk to a bit of a crisis, if I'm being honest, because so much of our workforce, especially in the tech heartbeat of Seattle, Bellevue, and Redmond, etc., is now operating on a hybrid or fully remote capacity. The freeze has set in harder than ever because people have retreated into their little commute bubbles and their digital silos. And I want to be very clear about what this feels like. So, for example, you're going to move into a neighborhood in Kirkland or Shoreline. Your neighbors are going to wave. They might even say hi to you and help you pull the trash up the driveway. They're nice, but you will quickly realize that their social circles were closed all the way back in 2014. And you'll say, hey, we should grab coffee sometime. And they'll say, absolutely, let's do that. And then nothing happens forever. The end. So if you're moving from the South or the Midwest or even parts of California where neighborly culture is just the default, this is honestly going to feel like social starvation. You're going to find yourself 6 months into your move, living in $1 million house with nobody to call if your car breaks down or if you just want to go grab a beer on a Friday night. So in 2026, the isolation is also compounded by the weather. When it's dark and it's gray outside, people stay inside. They don't hang out on the sidewalk and they don't chat over the fence. The dark side of Washington's social life is that it's a high effort state. So if you aren't willing to join multiple different hobby groups like a pickleball league and a hiking club just to find one true friend, you're going to be lonely here. And loneliness in the middle of a 6-month gray winter is a very sad thing indeed. Now, as a real estate broker who has sold hundreds of homes here, I have to talk to you about the physical dark side of our houses. So in Washington, your home is at war with the environment. We live in a beautiful state, but Western Washington is a temperate rainforest, and that means moisture is the enemy here. I see it every single week with out-of-state buyers. They'll say, buy a house in the summertime when everything is dry and the yard is beautiful and bright green and the flowers are out and the birdies are tweeting, and then winter hits. By March, they realize that their north-facing roof is covered in a solid inch of moss. That moss acts like a sponge, holding water against the shingles and rotting the roof structure from the inside out. They realize that their perfectly adequate, quote unquote, siding, if not painted every 5 years, is going to start to fail and could cost tens of thousands of dollars to replace. And then there's the crawl space. Most Washington homes are built on crawl spaces and not concrete slabs. So in 2026, with the increased rainfall patterns that we've been seeing here, water tables in areas like Renton, Snohomish, and Kent is higher than ever. If your sump pump fails in your crawl space, or if your vapor barrier wasn't installed correctly, you're basically going to be living on top of a swamp. I've seen upwards of $80,000 for repair bills for siding and drainage that could have been completely avoided with a little bit of work. But here's also another part of the dark side. So in 2026, the cost of specialized trades in Western Washington is at an all-time high because plumbers, roofers, and siding experts know they have you over a barrel because the demand for moisture remediation is constant. If you don't budget at least 1% of your home's value every single year just for fighting the moisture, the dark side of Washington is going to eat away at your home equity. Your home isn't going to just sit there. It will slowly return to the forest, literally, if you don't fight it off with a pressure washer and with your checkbook. Another pitfall is the logistics trap, and I have said it in other videos. We don't measure distance in miles here, we measure it in minutes. And with our roads, that poses a pretty big issue. So in Western Washington, we have a geography problem. We're squeezed between the Puget Sound and the Cascade Mountains. There are only so many ways to move north and south. The I-5 corridor is what we call a choking point that can turn, say, a 15-mile drive into a 90-minute ordeal. But the real dark side in 2026, aside from the roads, is the ferry system. So if you're looking at a beautiful home on, say, Vashon Island, or in Bremerton, or in Kingston, you're relying on the Washington State ferry systems. And as of this month, fares have hit record highs, and the summer surcharge is now 35% above the base rate. Wow. It's not just about the money though. It's also the reliability of the ferry that you have to worry about because the fleet is aging. Boat cancellations are common. I have had clients miss flights and doctor's appointments and kids' soccer games all because a ferry went out of service. So when you live across the pond, as we call it, you're living basically in a gilded cage. You have the most beautiful view in the world, but you're a prisoner to a schedule that you don't control. So if you choose your neighborhood based on a Zillow price tag without understanding the traffic nodes of 2026, you're going to end up living in a commute bubble. You're going to be in a state with world-class hiking, world-class skiing, and world-class water, and you're never going to be able to enjoy any of it because you're going to spend your daylight hours staring at the brake lights in the car in front of you instead of being out playing. Now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and the donkey for that matter, because in 2026, Washington isn't just a state, it's a fault line. If you're thinking about moving here to the peaceful Pacific Northwest paradise that we have, it is extremely important that you understand that we are currently living through a period of extreme political vitriol that very sadly, has turned neighbors into strangers. We have what locals call the Cascade Curtain here. So on one side, you have the urban core of Seattle and Bellevue, etc., and it's deeply progressive and it's activist driven, and it's wielding almost all legislative power in Olympia, by the way. On the other side, across the mountains, you have a conservative heartland, and the folk out there feel like they're being governed by a city that they don't recognize and by values that they don't share. But here's the real dark side that nobody wants to admit. The anger isn't just across the mountains anymore. It's actually on your front porch knocking on your door. So in 2026, the national political tension has filtered down into our cul-de-sacs here. I have sold hundreds of homes, and I am seeing, honestly, a new, very disturbing trend. And that's that buyers aren't asking about school scores anymore. First, when I get on the phone with them, they're asking about political signs. They want to know if their neighbors are going to share the same values as them. And if they don't, then that tension is going to be palpable. If you're a conservative moving into Seattle city limits, then you might feel like you have to keep your head down just to avoid being socially ostracized. If you're a liberal and you're moving to the rural stretches of, say, Pierce or Snohomish County or Eastern Washington, you might feel like an outsider in your own community. There is a deep-seated resentment, unfortunately, on both sides. So people aren't just quiet anymore. They're actually getting very selective. If your politics don't align with the area vibe, that cold shoulder that I was talking about can become a brick wall. We're seeing families move out of the state, not just because they lost their jobs, but also because they're exhausted from the social friction. They're tired of the arguments at the PTA meetings and the hostility on the Nextdoor app. And so before you move here, you have to ask yourself, can you handle living in a state where the person across the street might genuinely resent your worldview? Because Washington is a beautiful place, but in 2026, the Emerald has a lot of blue and red cracks in it. And if you don't pick your tribe very carefully, then you won't just be living in the big dark of the weather, you're actually going to be living in the big dark of some serious social hostility. And this is why having a roadmap matters. So it's not just about the house, it's about the peace of mind that you are going to have when you pull into your driveway. So why am I telling you all of this? Am I trying to talk you out of moving to Washington? No, I live here. I love it here. I grew up here. I've built my life here and my business here. My husband also grew up here. We got married here. But I'm telling you this because a sugar-coated move is a failure move. If you come here expecting to have 300 days of sun and a super low cost of living and super nice people, you're going to be gone in under 2 years. If you come here, though, knowing that the big dark is real and that the Seattle freeze requires some serious extra social effort on your side, then you can actually thrive here. This is exactly also what our real estate team helps people with. We aren't here just to spoon feed you positives. We're here to be your navigators. So if you're planning a move here or you're planning a move out of Washington and you want a roadmap that accounts for, say, the dark side just as much as the summer gold that we get here, then go ahead and click the link in the description below and book a discovery call with us. We aren't going to sell you a house on that call. We are going to build your 2026 strategy. Washington is a high-risk, high-reward state. And for the right person, that reward is a lifestyle that literally doesn't exist anywhere else in North America. But for the wrong person, it's a very expensive detour. The key is knowing if all of the outrageous beauty and all of the positives of the state are worth the price of admission. Thank you so much for watching. And if this reality check helped you, go ahead and click the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss one of our videos about life and real estate in Washington. And if you still want to move to Washington after this video and you're thinking, for example, say about island life, then go ahead and watch the video on the screen next because I think you're going to like it. And also, if you're thinking about moving here or relocating, please reach out to us. We would love to help you make your next move with confidence. I am Leah Courage. Thank you again so much for watching. Keep exploring, and we will see you in our next video.